Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Why don't you start off with introducing yourself and telling us about JLL and your position there?
I am a senior project manager on our sustainability consulting team. I sit in New York. I lead our decarbonization team for the Northeast. I've been at JLL for roughly 2 years, and I've been doing this a little over a decade in terms of being in the sustainability space. My background is engineering. I went to school for mechanical originally, but I jumped right into sustainability after school. Started in New York City working on individual buildings, and now working globally on entire real estate portfolios. I like to say I'm an engineer who can speak to people well about non-technical things, because sometimes that's, people think that if someone's technical, they kind of can't zoom out and see the forest for the trees.
Okay, I love it. So you have both the people skills and the technical ones. You're a rarity. What is decarbonization? Why should construction companies care about it?
There's a few main things. I think number one, it's what the planet needs, and I'll get to the business aspect. It's also good business, but just frankly, for a sustainable future, for a planet that's habitable and happy for our children, grandchildren, it's just what we need to do to reduce the carbon we're putting into the atmosphere in our entire supply chain, real estate included, because it's a significant chunk, and in construction included. On a more practical and business sense, right? What are the arguments I use on a day-to-day basis if I'm talking to somebody in the industry? A lot of investors, tenants, asset owners, Fortune 500s that have climate commitments, they all care about this. They have all committed to doing their part. And so now that becomes their public commitments, becomes reputational risk, which is financial risk, right? So number one, if you're a building, you're going to be more attractive if you're green and decarbonized to potential tenants, to another owner when you're trying to sell an asset. It increases the value, right? You're trying to avoid brown discounts and get those green premiums. The other reason why, the construction and real estate industry should care about decarbonization is, that's kind of the carrot. There's incentives. This is more true for Europe than the US, but you can get better financing. If you have a green development project, you can get a construction loan with a lower interest rate. There's green bonds you can get. So there's literal money tied to, decarbonizing real estate. And then on the stick end of things, there's a lot of legislation. New York City, where I sit, has Local Law 97, which is essentially a carbon tax on buildings. It's actually in effect now. This is the first year. It's been in effect since January. Buildings are on the clock. And there's over 40 other jurisdictions, mayors, governors in the US that are doing similar things, that actually look at it. How is a building performing? How much carbon is it emitting? How much energy is it using? And then setting penalties. So it's not just about building it right in the first place. You have to build it to operate efficiently. And now there's actual financial penalties for owners. So there's multiple angles and real money tied to this from owners, from tenants, investors, if the whole make a better planet for your children argument doesn't really do it for you.
I love that you're starting with the values and then the practicality. We're seeing these local laws show up, and then, there are a lot of grants and sponsorships and customer awareness. Is there a measurable practicality for a lot of the technology that we're seeing?
In other words, does it stand on its own 2 feet,
Yeah.
regardless of external pressure? I mean, the short answer, yes. Some of the newer technology, by definition, isn't as proven, but I'll pick on HVAC, being a mechanical engineer. Heat pumps, part of the big thing of decarbonization is electrifying how we heat, getting off gas boilers, and using heat pumps. They've been around for 3 decades, more prevalent in Southeast Asia, but European, US markets. They will give you a return on investment by themselves, just by how efficient they are. That could be said for a lot of other sustainable technology. Like the very definition of the word sustainable is doing something in a way you can keep doing potentially forever. It's just sometimes is high capital up front and it's a long-term investment because some of those products are newer, so you don't have the industry churn to make that supply chain more affordable. But solar is another one. Solar panels are dirt cheap, so much cheaper than they used to be 20 years ago. So even without the US government's giving a 30% tax credit on solar, you don't need it to make solar profitable. You stick up a panel and it makes you money. Essentially, like there's very low maintenance. But yeah, a lot of this technology stands its own on 2 feet as well.
Did you come by this position by choice or was this planned?
Where I ended up now is a combination of luck and purpose. I fell in love with the practicality of engineering and in particular the whole Tesla versus Edison thing and making, more energy available to everybody and being more efficient and just really seeing the product of my work in my lifetime and not kind of sitting in a lab and working on something in a silo. From the very beginning, I was focused on being in sustainability. I just kind of kept saying yes and kept learning more and kept taking on more opportunities. And here I am. So half planned, half taking advantage of the opportunities that were presented to me.
It's definitely a great attitude. What would you say is the most significant turning point in your career?
My second job, I would say, I was at a small P engineering firm where I learned a lot very quickly, but I was still very much the only looking at the sustainability problem at an engineering lens. Then I moved to a kind of more boutique sustainability consulting firm, real estate and construction, but I was zoomed out to a completely different perspective and started talking to entire real estate investment trusts and entire portfolios and trying to think about how does an investor look and care about this, not just the guy running the boiler in the basement. That really, really opened my eyes to the impact I could have working at a bigger scale and also just diversified. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades personally, and JLL really lets me flex that muscle very well. But initially, it was an accident, right? I was a mechanical engineer. But then once I started learning a little bit of architecture, a little bit of construction, a little bit of investor speak, and all of that, I really fell in love with having that wider perspective. And that gave me focus to say this now. The way I introduced myself, which was a little funny of being an engineer who could talk to people, but like I gained as much fulfillment out of conversations in the boardroom as I did sitting in the boiler room.
It's interesting because it's really kind of showing like where this leads people down their career, and I think it's also inspiring for people who are interested in kind of understanding your position. Can sustainability be profitable? And if so, can you give examples? So you gave already a few small ones, but we'll dab at it one more time.
Sure. I'd like to tell this one just because I personally think it's so cool. There's a company called Urban Mining, and what they do is they take the glass from New Yorkers' hands and put it underneath their feet. That's how I've internalized what they do. They put recycled glass into concrete. So this guy Lou, he buys up the glass if you're walking around New York and you throw your Snapple bottle into just the blue can on the street, that's our municipal recycling. New York City trying to stop taking our recyclables. It didn't have a lot of revenue streams for it or places to even take it. What he does is he buys that in bulk. What is the technology here is he has a proprietary process to clean it, chop it up, take it into tiny, tiny pellets, and he sticks it in concrete instead of, other materials. And you can understand how that's sustainable without even me doing a single bit of math or technical explanation, right? And it turns out the concrete's actually stronger, lasts longer, and is brighter, which some people want for like a sidewalk application. And it's not even that much of a premium, and in some cases not a premium at all. So it's such a win-win-win-win-win because it's a revenue stream for New York, which was doing nothing with this. Well, I'm sure they're doing something. I don't want to say that, but they weren't able to get rid of that as much recycling glass as they would like. And it makes for a better product that's stronger and more sustainable, right? And a huge profit center, for that waste stream. So I like to give that example because it's such a perfect circular economy where we should be going. Like there's no reason shouldn't just have a plant in every major city. Everybody's got glass, everybody's building buildings with concrete. Right. So those kinds of stories and solutions really, really give me hope that like it proves out the whole green business is good business. You just have to find the right application.
I'm going to pick at it just a little bit. So this is a fantastic example of kind of taking glass that's being recycled and then recycling it into the construction industry. So, I'm, there are a bunch of different industries that started off this way, even nylon and some other
Mm,
areas where it started off with recycling, but then once there's a certain demand that grows, what happens then? We creating or
mm,
producing? Are we going to manufacture glass to put into concrete? Like, how's this going to look like? And will the company, in terms of its mission and value to recycle, will it
mm,
say like, hey guys, we're done creating or producing concrete glass. Let's just go, and because we're done with recycling, or this is the max amount we're producing a year. Let's say we got to 100% efficiency, took all the glass in the world, shoved into their concrete. Now, will the company have the integrity of saying we're stopping here, or is this going to become another industry that's producing another type of waste? I'm just curious, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it.
yeah, it's an interesting question. My initial reaction is I would love to get to a world where that's the problem. It is a legitimate concern because there's another example as coal plants are closing down, they now actually are specifically sourcing fly ash to put into concrete and trying to mine for it, where it used to be a byproduct. It used to be a positive story in recycling. Like, hey, by the way, this is coal garbage that we're going to throw in. So that's actually very, very realistic. And then, I mean, I would say you move on to the next piece of waste product would be my quick answer, right? We're moving from fly ash to glass. If we use up all the glass, amazing. I'm sure there's some new nanotech sludge 100 years from now we can figure out if we're still using concrete.
In between the lines here is when you're looking really at sustainability and waste, you're always going to have to be open because tomorrow's solution is concrete and integrating recyclable glass, but maybe in the future that solution means taking another type of waste and kind of being
Yep.
aware and willing to challenge the status quo, which is going to need to be continuously challenged because we're going to have to use new materials, new ways of doing it, and being
It's
open
not
to testing
easy.
and the result. Yeah.
Something I think people would appreciate is at JP Morgan's new headquarters in New York City, right? So it's being used and treated legitimately. But what does it actually take to do that? Not only do they have to get tested, they have to find a contractor, a concrete contractor who's willing to put his license and his business on the line to try a new product. They got to ship product to him to formulate it, try it out, test it. Doesn't work. Test it again. Then you got to get a structural engineer to sign off on using a mix in a product he's never encountered before. He's going to want to see more test reports. And then you actually have to teach the contractor in the field to use it because it cures a little different and it takes a little longer and handles different. The amount of is that 4 or 5 different unique people that's for a single building. So the there is a lot of momentum. It's not easy, right? And it is profitable once you get over that initial kind of hump.
What are the greatest hurdles in the way of reaching decarbonization?
There's the classic answer of cost, but that's kind of boring. So I'm going to expand on that a little bit. I think it's supply chain, and there's a chicken and an egg problem of you need enough demand for someone to see a business opportunity, but then those same people won't want to be the guinea pig. So if someone creates a new sustainable solution for a material, for a technology, everyone wants to be the 10th or maybe the 5th customer, or maybe the 100th, depending on your risk appetite. But no one wants to be the first. And it's very expensive to do that. So there's the supply chain and that dynamic, and it's slowly shifting. I've seen, generally speaking, um, the European market and EMEA in general in that region, they've about a decade ahead in some aspects on sustainable development and technology. And so I'll find a cool product I want to use it on my project. I'll start to research it, contact the company, and they say, oh, we're only just building a factory in the US for the first time next year. Or we're just getting approvals and like going through legal things in the US. But hey, if you're in London, hit us up. We've been operating in Europe for years. The solutions exist all today. I could have built a net zero building 10 years ago, and I can certainly build a net zero building now and have decarbonized construction now. It's training. So if the owner doesn't even know what he needs to ask the contractor for to get a decarbonized building, like how is the market going to move that way? So there is a little bit of a knowledge gap, and that's why I really utilize my skill set. I think we're so jargoned. I mean, sustainability and ESG as its own little microcosm. We have a million acronyms, and it's sometimes, frankly, an echo chamber. So I think the outreach and the knowledge, and it can't just be sustainability professionals talking to sustainability professionals at conferences, right? We need to we need to meet people where they're at and talk to contractors where they're at, and investors and financial professionals and people who frankly don't care and don't think they should care about sustainability. That should be the target. I think those are sometimes the hurdles. Is it seen as a boutique thing, as a nice to have, as a premium, when really it should just be, this is the way we do business. This is just BAU 2.0. It's not a nice to have. It's not an add-on. Look at solar as an example. It's not political or controversial to put solar panels on your house. Texas and Florida have as many as New York and California.
Given the construction industry accounts to around approximately a third of the world's emissions, how can technology help the construction industry attain that zero?
We like to say real estate counts for 40%. But if we want to say construction, if I'm not gonna include, running the building and the energy, then 30%. JLL has an offshoot called JLLT that just focuses entirely on integrating technology into real estate. So I think there's three main insertion points. One is you can help in the design before, a single brick is laid, making a digital twin of what you're planning to build and just optimizing that to the nth degree. You can build 1 million buildings in a day, right? If it's through modeling, through things like Revit and building information modeling, fine tune that south-facing window. Can I just move it a little bit and squeeze a little bit more and more energy out of it? Also for prefabrication, that's another really, really awesome implementation I've seen. That's also sustainable, by the way, because if you're prefabricating walls or a building or an equipment room and then shipping it to the site, that's a lot less waste, right? If you're not literally trimming down a wall on site, you can save a lot of material. So on the design and getting things really, really engineered and going through multiple scenarios and optimizing, I think that still hasn't been fully utilized. And I'm sure this is really, at this point, rote to say AI. I feel like everyone's almost sick of hearing about it, but that is truly a good application for it. And I'll jump to my second one, which is in data. There is so much data that is untapped in construction. And one of our consulting adages is you can't manage what you don't measure, right? So if I'm a owner and I'm working with a contractor and I say, I want lower carbon materials, or I'll give you a KPI because they don't work in that specifics. Reduce the carbon by 20% of this build for me. Well, how do I even go about that? 20% from what? How do I measure that? And that's a data problem, because those submittals, how much concrete did you put in the building? How many square foot of carpet tile did you buy? Square meters, right? That data exists. It's just not in an easy to use centralized way, or it's for something else. Right now, that industry is tooled, all that data is around approving. Contractor buys a thing, architect and engineer looks at it, right? It's not for tracking carbon. It's not for, any other sustainability element. So I think, that's a big opportunity for technology. And then running the building itself, the amount of sensors, this idea of a smart building, the smart house of the future that, Disney pitched a long time ago, I think it's actually happening. There are full touchless buildings where I walk into an office building, turnstile opens for me, looks at my face, knows I work on the 4th floor. The elevator comes down for me. I haven't touched a single thing. It knows exactly what desk I'm working at today, etc. Adjusts the air and temperature on the building to me, to my preference in my office automatically. All of that is all technology enabled. So the design, the data, and then in the actual operation of the building, there's and all of that helps efficiency, right? We can insert technology. If you can operate anything more efficiently, that's more sustainable. That helps towards net zero.
What do you think the future of the construction industry looks like, and how can technology help shape that future? Kind of touched a bit about it now, but have any other inputs?
The future is going to be like you're never going to fully get rid of the human element. That's one point I wanted to make, is that, AI, I've heard someone say, is just kind of like the new Excel. Like it didn't replace the job of data analysts, it just improved them. So I think the future of the construction industry, all of the processes that are manual, all the data tracking, all of the information management. The construction is just one giant checklist, right? Like it's actually incredible that on average, most buildings don't fall down, right? We've done a pretty good job at it. How do we do that? Just managing information, and all that is so time intensive and so costly. So I think that's the part that technology will really boost and speed up and make things more efficient. Because sometimes a barrier, it's not about how quickly somebody can move material and get it in place. It's how quickly information can be moved. Someone needs to review something and approve it. And if that takes 2 weeks, that's 2 weeks of real time that I'm not building, right? So I think being able to build faster because technology helps us manage all the stuff and information and photos and documents and tracking to do with construction. In terms of sustainable buildings, I would love for, and I think what we're trying to do with clients every day is show that it's just a new way of doing things. It's a premium. It's not a nice to have. It's just a fundamental shift. So sustainability, maybe we won't even have to talk about it because that's just going to be the way we build buildings, right? That would be the long-term hope. But realistically, right, on the practical end, there's going to be a lot more technology. I just hope people pace themselves and don't forget about the people behind the screen.
Great. I'm very hopeful about that too. People keep on being concerned about the people part of this process, of construction, and it employs so many people also. Like I was actually listening just off
Hmm.
the bat. I was listening to an interview, just a conversation about what's going to happen if we automate vehicles and we're automating trucks, which is also a big part of the industry. Oh, it
Yeah.
accounts almost for 10 million people's jobs. It's a bit scary, but will you be able to allow autonomous trucks on the road? I think it's going to be interesting regardless to see how the AI conversation pans out and how much we become reliant on it versus how much we have control over that process as well.
I was gonna just add that health and safety can't be
Hmm.
forgotten in innovation. And I'm not making any claims that it is right now, but right, you can. That's a danger. I mean, that comes up in your truck example. I'm personally nervous about self-driving cars because my email can't even function without issues for a day. So I'm not necessarily ready to put my life, in a bucket of metal going 80 miles an hour into a machine reading things. So I think I think we have to keep viewing it as a tool, um, not necessarily a replacement, but that fear is real. And I think thinking about the people and the health and safety and their well-being, both financially and, literally, physically, I think will help kind of center and ground the industry while still letting the innovation happen.
Great. So, what is the legacy you want to leave behind you?
I'd like to leave the world a better place than I found it. I mean, that's sounds extremely corny, but that's actually, what I think to myself in terms of my overall goal. I am excited when a sustainability building grows up, but as I get older, I think actually changing hearts and minds, which is so much harder to do, and sometimes has a bigger impact than a single building. That's really where I'm aiming for.
What advice would you give startups and innovators trying to solve, sustainability challenges?
Look to existing models in other industries or successful technologies that have yet to be applied to real estate. We're pretty slow moving and behind the times on technology. I would say also, do your research, which is such a rote piece of advice, but actually talk to practitioners in the field before you even if it's a baby of an idea, talk to somebody who does this every day and lives and breathes it. I think we were talking before of like, is this actually a problem? They'll think they're solving a problem, and then they'll go talk to a contractor or somebody in construction. They'll say, "What are you talking about?" Nobody worries about that ever, right? The other thing is there's a lot of untapped ways to monetize sustainability in real estate. And I think there's a lot of opportunity actually just in improving the monetization and tracking the monetization. So what I mean specifically, right, is most sustainable business cases are just based on operating expenses. I'm going to build you a more efficient building. I'm going to sell you a more efficient piece of equipment. It's going to save you X money a year, and you get an ROI and you get a payback. But there's other kind of add-on benefits now we're just beginning to monetize and understand. Like, for example, it actually improves the asset value, right, of your building. Things like improving the air quality, improves cognitive performance, which actually increases the productivity and the profitability of employees. You know, that those are some examples, but think of ways to even further strengthen the business case of sustainability. That's just beyond, energy savings. We've been doing energy efficiency for decades at this point, right? I think people get it. That's the disruption. People get excited of here's a new way to make money doing something good for the planet. I think that's a very, very strong pitch if you can insert something there.
George, it's been amazing to have you on the podcast. This has been a blast. And yeah, I want to just say thank you. Really appreciate your insights. I think are invaluable. And I'm sure a lot of people here are going to be inspired.
Thank you very much. It was a really great opportunity. As you can tell, I love talking about this stuff, and I really, really appreciate the chance to talk about my favorite thing, which is saving the planet.
Love it. Thanks for getting on. Thanks for joining us.